What if I told you that true freedom only exists when paired with something most people try to escape? Viktor Frankl, the Austrian psychiatrist who survived the Nazi concentration camps, discovered that freedom without responsibility is not freedom at all. It's chaos. Frankl didn't just theorize about human nature from an ivory tower. He learned about the deepest truths of existence in the darkest places humanity has ever created. In the concentration camps of Auschwitz and Dachau, where every external freedom was stripped away, he witnessed something extraordinary. Some prisoners maintained their inner dignity, while others collapsed. What made the difference? It was their willingness to remain responsible for their response to suffering. But let me take you on a journey through Frankl's understanding of responsibility, not as a burden we carry, but as the other side of the coin we call human freedom. Imagine responsibility not as chains that bind us, but as wings that allow our freedom to soar with purpose. Frankl taught us that freedom and responsibility exist in what he called a dialectical relationship. You cannot have one without the other. Think of it like breathing. You cannot only inhale without exhaling. Freedom is the inhale. Responsibility is the exhale. Together, they create the rhythm of meaningful existence. When we speak of freedom, we often think of the absence of constraints. But Frankl discovered that true freedom lies in our ability to choose our response to any given situation. And here's the profound insight. That choice is meaningless unless it's made responsibly. Consider Maria, a teacher who loses her job during an economic crisis. She has the freedom to respond in countless ways. She can become bitter, blame others, or sink into despair. Or she can choose to see this as an opportunity to pursue a dream she's always postponed. Both responses are free choices, but only the responsible choice creates meaning. The responsible choice asks not just what do I want, but what does this situation demand of me? What is the most meaningful response I can give? This is what Frankl meant when he said that responsibility is our ability to respond to life's demands. Every moment presents us with a question, and we are responsible for our answer, not because someone is watching us, not because we'll be punished if we choose poorly, but because our response shapes who we become. It determines whether our freedom leads to growth or destruction. In the concentration camps, Frankl observed men who, despite having every reason to abandon hope, chose to share their last piece of bread with fellow prisoners. They had no freedom to leave, no freedom to protest, no freedom to change their circumstances. But they maintained the ultimate human freedom, the freedom to choose their attitude. And with that freedom came responsibility. They chose to remain human in conditions designed to strip away their humanity. This brings us to a crucial distinction Frankl made between responsibility to ourselves and responsibility to others. We are responsible to ourselves to find meaning in our existence, to become who we are capable of becoming. But we are also responsible to others to contribute something valuable to the human community. These two forms of responsibility don't compete. They complement each other like notes in a harmony. Think about David, a surgeon who discovers he has a chronic illness that will eventually end his career. His responsibility to himself involves accepting this reality and finding new ways to create meaning, perhaps through teaching, writing, or mentoring. His responsibility to others involves using his remaining time and energy to serve patients and train the next generation of doctors. Both responsibilities guide him toward choices that transform a personal tragedy into a meaningful transition. But what about those situations where responsibility seems impossible? What about circumstances so overwhelming that any response feels inadequate? Frankl called this unconditional responsibility. He insisted that even in the most extreme situations, we remain responsible for our inner stance toward what happens to us. This doesn't mean we're responsible for everything that happens to us. That would be cruel and false. It means we're responsible for what we make of what happens to us. Sarah loses her child in a tragic accident. She cannot be held responsible for the accident itself, but she can choose how to carry this unbearable grief. She can choose whether to let it destroy her completely or whether to honor her child's memory by helping other grieving parents. Neither choice erases the pain, but one choice creates meaning from meaninglessness. One choice transforms suffering into service. This unconditional responsibility points us toward what Frankl called self-transcendence. True responsibility moves us beyond our ego, beyond our immediate desires and fears. It connects us to something larger than ourselves. When we act responsibly, we're not just serving our own interests. We're serving values that outlast us, purposes that extend beyond our individual existence. Frankl rejected the idea that we are merely products of our genes, our upbringing, or our circumstances. He called this the freedom of the will, our capacity for self-determination. But freedom without responsibility becomes license. It becomes the tyranny of impulse, the slavery of immediate gratification. Responsible freedom asks, not just can I do this, but should I do this? What are the consequences of this choice for myself and others? This freedom carries a temporal dimension. We are responsible not just in this moment, but across time. We bear responsibility for choices we've made in the past, not in the sense that we should be paralyzed by guilt, but in the sense that we must integrate these experiences into our ongoing growth. We are responsible for choices we make in the present because they shape our future and impact others. And we are responsible to the future, to future generations, to future versions of ourselves, to the unrealized possibilities that depend on our current choices. Consider how this applies to education. If we understand responsibility as Frankl did, then education is not just about transferring information. It's about developing character, about helping young people understand that their freedom comes with the weight and privilege of responsibility. It's about showing them that they have the power to respond to life's questions and that their responses matter. In our contemporary world, Frankl's insights about responsibility feel more relevant than ever. We face global challenges that require both individual and collective responsibility. Climate change, inequality, mental health crises. These issues demand that we exercise our freedom responsibly. They call us to transcend narrow self-interest and consider our impact on the broader human community. But responsibility, in the Franklian sense, is not about guilt or obligation imposed from outside. It's about recognizing that our choices have consequences, that our freedom is meaningful precisely because it allows us to make a difference. When a young entrepreneur chooses to build a business that serves a social need rather than just maximizing profit, she's exercising responsible freedom. When a parent chooses to model emotional regulation rather than just demanding it from their children, they're teaching responsibility through example. The beauty of Frankl's perspective is that it makes every moment significant. Every choice, no matter how small, is an opportunity to exercise responsible freedom. The way you respond to a difficult colleague, the attitude you bring to a challenging task, the compassion you show to someone who's struggling, these are all expressions of your fundamental human capacity to choose responsibly. Even in failure, responsibility offers a path forward. When we act irresponsibly, when we make choices that harm ourselves or others, we can still choose how to respond to our mistakes. We can choose guilt and self-condemnation, or we can choose accountability and growth. Responsibility doesn't demand perfection. It demands honesty and the willingness to learn. Michael, a recovering alcoholic, caused immense pain to his family during his drinking years. He cannot undo the damage he caused, but he can take responsibility for his recovery and for making amends where possible. He can choose to let his past define him as a failure, or he can choose to let his past inform his future service to others struggling with addiction. His failures become part of his qualification to help others, not a permanent disqualification from meaningful contribution. The same principle applies to smaller failures and mistakes. The manager who handles a team conflict poorly can choose defensiveness and blame, or she can choose to acknowledge her mistakes, learn from feedback, and develop better skills for future situations. The parent who loses their temper with their child can choose to rationalize their behavior, or they can choose to apologize, reflect on what triggered them, and work on developing better emotional regulation. What makes responsibility liberating rather than burdensome is that it always offers hope. No matter what we've done or failed to do, we can choose how to respond from this moment forward. We cannot change the past, but we can influence how the past affects the future. We cannot control all circumstances, but we can control our response to circumstances. This is perhaps Frankl's greatest gift to us, the recognition that responsibility is not a burden, but an opportunity. It's the opportunity to make our lives meaningful, to contribute something valuable to the world, to become who we are capable of becoming. It's the recognition that our freedom is not diminished by responsibility, but fulfilled through it. The opportunity of responsibility reveals itself most clearly in moments of crisis and challenge. The healthcare worker during a pandemic can choose fear or service. The teacher during remote learning can choose frustration or creativity. The parent during economic uncertainty can choose anxiety or resourcefulness. The citizen during social unrest can choose division or healing. Each choice is an opportunity to exercise responsible freedom, to demonstrate what humans are capable of when they align their freedom with their highest values. But responsibility also reveals itself in ordinary moments. The grocery store clerk who greets each customer with genuine warmth is exercising responsible freedom. The neighbor who checks on an elderly resident is choosing to serve the common good. The commuter who yields in traffic rather than fighting for advantage is practicing responsible community membership. These small acts may seem insignificant, but they contribute to the moral fabric of society. Frankl understood that meaning emerges not from grand gestures, but from the accumulation of responsible choices. Life asks us hundreds of small questions every day, and our collective responses to these questions determine who we become. Do we choose patience or irritation when delayed? Do we choose encouragement or criticism when others struggle? Do we choose gratitude or complaint when faced with imperfection? Each choice matters because each choice shapes our character and influences our environment. In the end, Frankl shows us that the question is not whether we will be responsible. The question is how we will be responsible. We cannot escape the fundamental human condition of having to choose. Every moment presents us with options, and even choosing not to choose is itself a choice. But we can choose to embrace responsibility as the pathway to meaning, purpose, and authentic freedom. The beauty of this understanding is that it transforms every challenge into an opportunity. The diagnosis that threatens our health becomes an opportunity to live more intentionally. The relationship conflict that causes pain becomes an opportunity to develop better communication skills. The career setback that disappoints us becomes an opportunity to reassess our values and priorities. The loss that breaks our hearts becomes an opportunity to discover depths of resilience we never knew we possessed. This doesn't mean we should be grateful for suffering or pretend that difficulties are blessings in disguise. Pain is real, loss is devastating, injustice is wrong. But within every difficult situation lies the opportunity to exercise responsible freedom, to choose responses that create meaning from meaninglessness, to become more fully human through our encounter with life's challenges. The invitation of responsible freedom is always present. In the grocery store line, when someone cuts ahead, we can choose patience or anger. In the workplace, when a colleague takes credit for our idea, we can choose resentment or constructive action. In the family, when old conflicts resurface, we can choose to repeat familiar patterns or create new possibilities. Each choice matters because each choice shapes who we become and influences the world around us. As Viktor Frankl himself said, everything can be taken from a person but one thing, the last of human freedoms, the ability to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. And with that freedom comes the invitation, no, the privilege of responsibility. It's the privilege of making our lives matter, of contributing something valuable to the human story, of becoming co-creators in the ongoing project of human flourishing. When we understand responsibility, as Frankl did, we realize that we are never powerless, never without options, never merely victims of circumstances. We may be limited by our situation, but we're never eliminated as actors in our own story. We may be influenced by forces beyond our control, but we retain the ultimate power to choose our response. We may face suffering that seems unbearable, but we can still choose what that suffering means and how it changes us. If this exploration of Viktor Frankl's wisdom on responsibility has resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe to our channel and share this message with others who might benefit from these insights. Because in a world that often confuses freedom with the absence of responsibility, we need more people who understand that true freedom and responsibility dance together in the beautiful choreography of meaningful living.